Red Sea is an aquarium company that's been around for literally decades. If you kept reef tanks in the mid to late 90s, you would be certainly familiar with the venerable Berlin Venturi protein skimmer, which was my first large beefy protein skimmer. But in recent years, Red Sea has really shaped the image of their brand around their high quality glass aquariums, their smaller all-in-one tanks, and especially their additives. Now, there are a lot of different additive brands that may be popular in certain regions or in certain countries, but no doubt Red Sea probably has the biggest global footprint when it comes to additives in the reef aquarium hobby. Now, in recent years, there's definitely been a rise in the availability and the popularity of dosers and dosing pump systems. So 3 years ago, Red Sea first showed off their brand new Red Sea ReefDose 2 and ReefDose 4. We thought these products would be forthcoming, but it's been about 3 years of research and development to really button up everything about these dosing pumps. And in today's video, we're going to take a deep dive into these pumps, install them on one of our tanks, and give you our general feedback. So I'm Jake Adams. Thank you for joining me on this video from the Reef Builder Studio, and let's get started. All right, so I've had my hands on the ReefDose 2 and ReefDose 4 for just about a week. A few days ago, I did one of my signature teardowns of the ReefDose 2 to take it all apart and just kind of see everything that's inside, because when you're just looking at the surface, it's really hard to know all the moving or non-moving parts and essential components that really puts a system like this together. So I was actually quite surprised to see that there's a nice full-length gasket around one of these units, and each of the motors sits in kind of like a rubberized seat, so as it's spinning, any kind of vibration and noise is certainly dampened. And the dosing system was originally designed with servo motors, but in my teardown I mentioned that they had a kind of commonly available brushed style DC motor, but this morning I actually got an email from the designer Neil Marks, who informed me that these guys actually have what they're calling a step controlled head. If you'll bring it in here, Evan, I'm not super sure I know exactly what this means, but these heads actually come off really easily, and you won't see this on video, but when you turn these, there's certainly like a point of pressure and then a point where it just kind of evens out. And you'll see this when you're spinning, it just kind of really locks into one place. So I'm guessing that that is the step motor function that they're talking about. And also, this is, very accessible. You can pull out the whole thing, and yeah, I don't know, it just seems really well built. You've seen probably a lot of different dosing pumps that have more or less the same kind of peristaltic dosing pump heads, and it makes it kind of confusing to know who's actually producing some genuine original articles. So this is the ReefDose 2, and I'm sure you've guessed by now, this is a 2-channel doser, this is a 4-channel doser. God, I want to say this one's $229 and this one's $349. So another thing that's really cool, and this is one of those things that just really adds to your enjoyment of the overall system, is Red Sea put together these kits that have colored tubing. As you guys know, in some of my previous dosing videos, I already use colored tubing, but this is colored tubing intended for dosing purposes. So we've got pink, red, orange, yellow, and then in this pack, which is not open yet, we've got purple, blue, teal, and green. And along with that, there's a dosing line holder. Obviously, this is going to fit Red Sea sumps very well, but if you have kind of like a Euro brace style sump, this might not fit quite as well, because I think we're working with just a little bit more than ½ an inch right there. And then the dosing lines will just kind of seat right there, and with some little nipples or some little barbs to make it fit in well. And then, they went a little bit further than that, which I really appreciate, because you guys know I do a lot for cable management management to just keep everything out of sight is they have these little basically clamping organizers. So you put your tubes in line, clamp it shut, and a couple screws to keep it in place, and it's gonna look really, really cool. So I already use the colored lines not as a frivolous addition to my dosing setups, but I have blue for the buffer, pink for the calcium, and green for the magnesium. So I'm gonna have to pick and choose from these sets to keep everything I guess standardized throughout my entire aquariums. I'm really looking forward to set this up. So next to me, you'll see the ReefDose 2 that I've set up pretty much for demonstration purposes and kind of to test some of the capabilities of the ReefDose accuracy. And then the ReefDose 4, we're gonna install on one of our larger reef tanks for long-term use. Now, we had no problem connecting everything to the ReefDose app. One of the first things it does is it prompts you to calibrate the device with some included glass graduated cylinders. And I went through the motion for both dosing pump heads. And one of the things that I saw that I thought was really cool is in Germany at Energy 2018, when this device was first launched, Red Sea had set up basically their dosers. And instead of looking at a small graduated cylinder, they had a small scale so you could digitally see the accuracy of the ReefDose. So I've tried to basically duplicate that setup. So I'm here in manual dosing, and we're gonna do a couple things just to show you just how accurate this thing can be. So our first dose is gonna be 0.2 mLs, and it should give us 0.2 grams. So there's our proceed. So we have 0.2 grams, just like I dosed. Next, we're gonna do 0.3, which should give us a total of 0.5 grams. So now we're at 0.5, and now I'm gonna tell it to do half an ml, which should take us to 1 gram overall. Boom, on the dot, 3 times in a row. So man, it's one thing to say that you're precise or accurate. Obviously you really want to be very thorough and thoughtful when you're doing the calibration, because that is going to be reflected into all your dosing volumes that you do on your reef aquarium. So I think it's enough of showing you guys this setup right here. I'm really glad that worked, because it's one thing to say that something is accurate, it's another thing to demonstrate it, and the ReefDose is really living up to that. So we're gonna walk over to our oldest large display, reef display here on the studio, show you the doser that we have set up, and then we're gonna install the ReefDose 4. All right, so here you can see the 5-foot Reefer Peninsula XL. You know, it's funny how the tank looks half full and you look at it just side on, but when you start looking at it from above, you can really appreciate just how much coral and growth has happened in this reef tank. So this was initially started as a Montipora dominated aquarium, but due to some persistent mati-eating nudibranch, we started incorporating a little bit more diversity, because Montipora eating nudibranch do not eat acroporas, so definitely a lot of acros here. This is kind of the deep water or the smooth-skinned acropora nursery here at the bottom, a little bit more around the side. We've got a very large, very showy blue squamosa clam who has just rocked it in this tank for a very long time, and then a little bit more of our Montipora. So let me show you the dosing setup we're currently working with. So I've been using the John Lenn, just kind of manual digital dosing pumps. I really have always loved these because I can quickly dial in stuff, but there's a lot of features that aren't available. Like there's only 9 dosing times per day. And you see we have some colored dosing just going to the bottles that are coming into it. And then we have some clearish dosing here that is routed right here. As you can see, it's getting a little busy, a little clustered. So my plan is to basically mount the dosing lines right there and have my nice colorful rainbow coming down here. So we're gonna get that set up and just see how it looks afterwards. Cool, so we got the ReefDose 4 all set up, and You know, the first time you use any new piece of software, it can be a little feel clunky because it's a new environment. But once I calibrated one dosing pump head and then another and another, it went really fast. And you know, I got that digital scale more for demonstration, but for calibration, it really smooth lined things. So I wasn't sitting there looking at a little graduated cylinder and like, oh, we're at the mark. Got a little bit more precise. So a couple of the pumping heads, I had to recalibrate them a couple times to get it right on point, but it was also pretty smooth. And one thing that I really enjoyed about the ReefDose app, as far as dosing, using the ReefDose, is there's a mode where you can just do like 24-hour mode, where it'll you can just tell it how much to dose, and it'll break that up into 24 cycles. And I know with some other dosing pumps, maybe some of the older ones, I've had to manually do that, right? Enter a value for every 24 hours and do some math. And so anytime I changed the overall dosing volume, I had to go back and change every 24-hour dosing. So that was cool that it was built in. I can see why Red Sea was really put a lot of emphasis on the accuracy of the ReefDose, because they have some of the most concentrated dosing fluids. Every time I'm mixing up bulk additives, I'm comparing it to the concentration of the Red Sea buffer, because it's really, really concentrated. But I will take the camera and just kind of show you what we've done so far. We've got the ReefDose Setup right here. And man, I just kind of put it on the shelf. It comes with some brackets, and I didn't use that yet because Red Sea's got that new sliding panel. So I think in the future, if I get a second unit, I'll just do it all at once, and I just have the shelf set up. So you'll notice also there's a little bit of slack on each of these lines, so that each of the dosing bottles can easily be you know, pulled out and refilled. But man, super happy to see the actual color coding with our pink calcium, blue buffer, green magnesium, and we don't have color for the Acro Power, but I just have this routed through here, through the stand. And I didn't clean it up that much right there because it just kind of stayed together. But then once it comes over to this section, it's just super nice and clean. The line holder here at the end is actually really nice. And I just can't overstate just how clean this is, right? It holds all the tubing in place before you kind of clamp it, lock it shut. And man, this is actually one of the coolest solutions I've seen for organizing tubing. And the dosing lines themselves, unlike some other vinyl tubing styles, it's really flexible. I've used some colored vinyl before, and you know, it's wound up, and as soon as you untie it, you know, it's still really kinked up, and you need to give it some time to relax. But this tubing is really high grade silicone, a little bit smooth, not at all like vinyl. And I just, man, I kind of wish I had a need to go through some of the other systems to use this this kind of silicone. But yeah, let me show you a couple other things that I came across. There's a lot of modes in the ReefDose app, so I haven't gone through all of them. Just setting all my scheduling was super easy. There's a whisper, regular, and turbo mode, so basically 3 speeds for the dosing pump motors themselves. And I just put them all on whisper, right? It's kind of like the difference. Do you want to have to be loud and really short, or do you want to be quieter and a little bit longer? And in pretty much all applications, I just want my additives to be, you know, applied to the tank a little bit slower. So I went back and checked the pricing. It is $229 for the 2-channel doser. It's $349 for the 4-channel doser. And there's a lot of dosers on the market right now. I think $349 is really competitive. The thing that's going to really set it apart is the stepper controlled head for accuracy, and the ReefDose app. I mean, I feel like a lot of the value in dosing pumps nowadays is going to be in the programming and the scheduling, the ease of connectivity, and the ease of making changes, because we've grown all of these corals here just with multi-part dosing, and we're frequently testing the water and adjusting the chemistry, adjusting the dosing to keep the chemistry where it needs to be. I think the last thing that is still kind of open-ended is, you know, Red Sea has their Red Sea Reef Care program, and you have 4 bottles of trace elements that are dosed in proportion to your calcium. So I only have the 4-channel doser right now, but when I get another one, I'm really interested to see how the ReefDose app handles the dosing of those trace elements based on how much calcium you add. I also have a calc reactor, so that's providing some of the calcium already, but I'm curious to see if those will be really plug and play, because that would be really nice. That would be a compelling reason to dip into a little bit more sophisticated trace element additive dosing on the system, but we'll have to wait and see. And I really hope that you can dial it down, because I'm pretty sure when this tank is using a ton of calcium, it doesn't need the same degree of trace elements, but that's something that remains to be seen. So far the experience of installing, calibrating, and programming the ReefDose, the Red Sea ReefDose 4 and 2 has been really easy. I know it's an added expense, but man, that digital scale just made it so much easier, and it gave me a certain degree of confidence that I was right on 4 milliliters for the calibration dose. So yeah, good kudos to Red Sea. They took their sweet time getting this out to market. I think it's going to be a really exciting product for the reef aquarium hobby, and it's going to start to round out their overall reef aquarium ecosystem. I think the only thing they're missing maybe is like a heater and a return pump, but I wouldn't be surprised if those are on the horizon. So this is a great time. If you have any questions about the Red Sea ReefDose 2, 4, and the ReefDose app and how it works, if you have any questions about that, go ahead and pop them in the comments. I'll see if I can get Red Sea to chime in with some of your questions. But otherwise, I'll do my best to answer them as they come along. So make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you never miss a video from Reef Builders YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me on this video, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.